are using peptides? There's one, two. Nice, nice. So a little different than collagen peptides. I heard that. Good one. So this world of peptides is exploding. And peptides are, before I get into the bioregulators, peptides are really small proteins, and they're signaling molecules, and they're naturally occurring in the human body. And it's been figured out that if we can reintroduce those peptides back to the body when we need them, they can initiate processes in our bodies that we decide we need at that time. So peptides live in a funny little gray zone. They're not legal, they're not illegal, they're kind of somewhere in the middle. Unless if you're a high-performance athlete, in which case they're probably illegal for you. So today, though, we're going to talk about bioregulator peptides, which is a big passion of mine because they are inherently central to the concept of health span, longevity, and reversing age, biological age specifically. So the challenge of aging is that, well, it kind of starts from the minute we're born, right? And if we look up aging online, if you Google aging, you're going to see a whole lot of pictures. You're going to see the lady. Have you ever seen that picture of the lady with the zipper face, where half her face is really young and the other half is really old? Yeah. So we are, as a culture, we're obsessed with how good we look. The challenge is that aging goes a whole lot deeper than that. And to people like you guys, people at conferences like this, we know that what we don't want is this. And this is the traditional aging process. We slow down, we kind of shrink, we don't move quite as fast in any way, shape, or form. And at this stage of the game, the good news is that we have options, right? This is what we're after. We want to age, never mind gracefully, we want to kick ass, right? We want to look good, we want to keep moving, we want to put the paper away. Thank you. I'm sorry. That was really rude for a speaker to do. I apologize. Anyway, this is what we want. And we are at such an exciting time, right? Regenerative medicine is exploding. The options for us to reclaim our youth, to hang on to our function, to be as healthy and vibrant as we can be, are huge. The challenge is that a lot of these things are really expensive, and sometimes they involve knives and things, like unpleasant things, and we're going to talk about a different way to go about it today. So in order to get health span, we've got to address the diseases of aging. Mostly, we've got to avoid the disease of aging. And that's what you guys are all here all about, right? The keto diet, in many ways, people who are going after the keto diet have come to the awareness that carbs and sugar, well, excess carbs, processed carbs, sugar, all those processed foods are slowly, sometimes not so slowly, killing us. So avoiding these diseases of aging, which are fundamentally preventable, is job one. Fact of the matter is that aging is complex. It's not just about disease, right? It's about toxins, it's about our attitudes, it's about stress. There's so many different pieces to the aging puzzle that we have to address. So one thing I really want to, and I'm going to repeat this a number of times, is as magical as bioregulator peptides are going to sound to you, we must never forget that it's everything else that we're doing that's going to prepare the terrain, that's going to get our bodies in that place where we can avail ourselves of these compounds so that they can do for us what they can do. And what does that mean in real English? It means we got to sleep, we got to manage our stress, we got to get outside, we got to reconnect with nature, we got to eat real food as much as possible, we got to eat the right foods, we got to exercise, all those things. All right, address micronutrient deficiencies, all the things. All right, so why do we age? So this is a diagram of what are referred to as the hallmarks of aging. This is one of the many theories of aging out there. This actually is out of date. There's 9 hallmarks of aging up there. As of the beginning of this year, there are now 12 hallmarks of aging, and there's another 3 coming down the pipes. And I can promise you that there will be more, right? So the hallmarks of aging are all of these processes at a cellular level that are driving the aging process. So that could be the misfolding of proteins. It could be damage to DNA. It's cellular senescence, which is a big, big buzzword these days, right? So getting rid of those zombie cells, or at least keeping the load down. The cells stop communicating efficiently with each other. So there's all these little things going on under the surface that's driving this aging process. But there's other theories of aging. Another theory of aging is the peptide theory of aging. Not many people have heard of the peptide theory of aging because the guy who came up with it, who's on the next slide, isn't that well known in the Western world. But the peptide theory of aging says that as we age, we become less effective and efficient at producing the peptides in our bodies that allow our bodies to regenerate and to repair. I actually think the peptide theory of aging is probably another hallmark of aging. So not that this man, does he look like he would tolerate being just a hallmark of aging? Not so much. He's got his own theory, goddammit it, it's right. Okay, so Professor Kavinson, Dr. Kavinson, Vladimir Kavinson is a Russian dude. He was approached by the military as a young doctor in the military in Russia. And they said to him, here's the thing, Vladimir, our soldiers are dying. We're sending them out in nuclear submarines. They're coming back a hot mess. The cosmonauts are going up into space. They're coming back 20 years older than they left a week ago. Then there's all these crazy kind of weapons that people are developing that could actually make our guys blind. We need you to find a solution to this problem. Here's a big blank check. We have legions of people in Siberia. You can do whatever you want. Go to town. So he did. And he discovered some really cool stuff. And as you can see here, he discovered peptide bioregulators. And how he defines what peptide bioregulators do is that they regenerate organs impaired by aging, disease, and trauma. How cool is that? Right? Essentially, as we age, our parts wear out. This is not a novel concept, but what if we could turn on some genes and we could fix the repairs? Kind of like having a self-repairing car. That would be pretty cool. It exists, sort of. We're going to talk about that. So the peptides developed at the St. Petersburg Institute of Bioregulation and Gerontology, I don't think I will ever remember that name, constitute a proven biological reprogramming technology, rejuvenating cells to revitalize tissue, organs, and entire bodies, ultimately decreasing vulnerability to age-related degenerations and prolonging human life. So he did some really cool experiments on mice and rats and noticed that he could get them to live longer. Now the problem is when you go to reproduce these experiments on humans, it's really complicated because humans live a really long time and it probably isn't that ethical. So what he said about doing with humans is actually showing that they would live better. So we're going to get to those in a minute, but let's define what a bioregulator peptide is first. So a bioregulator peptide is the teeniest, tiniest little protein you could ever imagine. Proteins are made up of amino acids. You guys all, I'm guessing most of you know what amino acids. You guys are a pretty literate group. So it's like the single Lego blocks, right? So bioregulator peptides have no more than 4 and no fewer than 2 amino acids. Super cool. What's really cool about that, it means that they can actually penetrate the cellular membrane. They can get into the nucleus of the cell. They can bind to DNA, which allows the DNA to unwind and start to produce proteins. And those proteins is what ultimately regenerates the tissue, gland, or organ that is targeted by the specific bioregulator. How cool is that? It's just cool, right? I mean, and look, I'm a super nerd. I apologize. I think all these things are really cool. Sometimes people look at me and go, all right, whatever. So, all right, so where do they come from? So it turns out that we make those peptides. Bioregulator peptides are endemic to our systems. The trouble is that we make them a lot better when we're wearing a pink shirt like that little girl than by the time we're wearing a blue shirt or a black shirt, right? As we age, we don't make those peptides as efficiently. And so we don't repair the same way. We see the way little kids repair. We can be a little jealous of that because we don't repair quite as easily. We don't recover as easily. So where else can we get them? How do we use them therapeutically? We can get them from animals. So any of you guys eat organ meats? Okay, guess what's in organ meats? Bioregulators. There are bioregulator peptides. If you've ever gone on the Heart and Soil website and seen unbelievable testimonials of people saying, I started using beef organs or whatever it is, and I've never felt better and I've had transformation, there's bioregulator peptides in those organs. The difference is with supplements is we concentrate them even more. So it's kind of like the difference between eating an orange and taking vitamin C, the good kind, not the bad kind, not the moldy, bad kind of GMO kind. So bioregulator peptides that we can buy commercially. There's a booth downstairs, Profound Health. Anybody notice it downstairs? Yeah. So they sell oral supplements and actually increasingly sprays, but the oral supplements are actual extracts from tissues, glands, and organs from specially raised cows under specially raised conditions that represent each of those tissues, glands, and organs that we want to repair in ourselves. So these are nutritional supplements. The other way we can get bioregulator peptides for people, I'm guessing there's not too many vegans in the room, but if there's anybody here who really has a problem with eating animal protein or taking anything from animals, there are synthetic versions of these bioregulator peptides. And so they can be recreated in a lab, and they're actually really useful also because someone with a lot of autoimmune issues, for example, sometimes can't tolerate the food portion. They can't tolerate the biological bioregulator peptide, so we use the synthetic peptide. The synthetic form of the bioregulator tends to be faster acting. The effects are not always as long acting. The food one, the actual extract from the organ, it takes a little longer to kick in, but once it does, the results stick a little longer. Now, there's a third form of the bioregulator peptides that we don't actually get access to here, and those are the animal extracts, but they've been prepared as an intramuscular injection. We can't find those outside of Russia. Those actually are the most powerful version of the bioregulators. And they've caused no end of havoc in the industry because people don't differentiate between the different kinds. And there are fights in my Facebook group, which is rather large, from people saying the dosage is 10 milligrams a day. No, it's 100 micrograms. No, it's 1 milligram. Well, so-and-so said it's 10 milligrams, 10 days a month. So I will just tell you, there are different forms of bioregulator peptides, and the devil is in the details. But that's not what we're talking about right now. So what can we expect from bioregulators, right? So in a healthy person, Cavinson speaks to every body having a 42% biological reserve that is untapped, okay? So imagine that wherever you are, there's another 42% of improvement that you could get if you could just figure out how to tap into it. So for a healthy body, what a bioregulator peptide might help to do is what we talked about earlier. It's just getting that machine back to where it was, right? Just restoring function. In someone who's ill, we're going to use the bioregulators a little bit differently. We will use the bioregulator in conjunction with other treatments. It could be supplements, it could be a drug, it could be whatever, what have you. And it's going to repair as we restore, right? So there's those 4 R's of healing: repair, restore, replace, remove. All of those things have to happen. They are all done by different pieces of the puzzle. The bioregulator fits one of those pieces really well. And very often, it's the missing piece, right? Because what else do we have access to that can restore function? Like can heal the pancreas, can heal the liver, can get the pineal gland to do what it used to do for us so that we can sleep through the night. Super cool. Again, propeller head over here. All right, so there are 21 bioregulator peptides that are available to us from companies like Profound Health downstairs, right? So Cavinson, it's been said, has actually figured out that there are 52, but they're not all available to us, or at least not here. Each of the bioregulator peptides is associated or is derived from and will act upon a specific tissue, gland, or organ. These are the top 6. If you threw me on a desert island and said, Nat, you get 1. I'd kick and scream for a few minutes, and then I'd say, okay, fine. I'll take Epitalon. Epitalon is the pineal bioregulator. It's that one, the one with the brain, and I'm hoping I'm going to be able to, yes, I am. So the pineal gland bioregulator is Epitalon. And what does it do? Well, the first thing that it does is it activates an enzyme called telomerase. How many of you guys know what a telomere is? Yes! All right, so we know that we don't want our telomeres to get super short. We're not exactly clear on the exact relationship between death and short telomeres. We just know that short telomeres are generally not a good thing. So if we can take something that helps to extend those telomeres, this is a good thing. So Epitalon can do that. It also normalizes melatonin production. Super cool, because of course our melatonin production kind of goes down. Now that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be wearing your blue blockers before bed. It doesn't mean you shouldn't be avoiding your screens before bed, but all things remaining equal, even if we did everything perfectly, our melatonin production would naturally decrease as we age. So anything that we can do to restore that function to the pineal gland is going to be a good thing. It also helps to restore circadian rhythms. Disrupted circadian rhythm is a huge piece of aging. This is a good thing. Next, it'll reset the endocrine system. So the cool thing about the pineal bioregulator, this epidolon is very often the anchor to many of the protocols that we develop. For example, a hormonal protocol, if we're trying to support fertility in women, we will use epidolon along with an ovarian bioregulator, and we'll probably think that it's a really good idea to support the thyroid gland and the adrenals at the same time, and we have bioregulators for all of those. But the pineal gland is the master conductor, if you will, of the endocrine system in the body. And so this bioregulator can help to restore, it can help us to restore balance. Then there's thymogen. One of the big reasons why people get sick and die is because their immune system kind of stops working, right? Our immune system declines as we age. Thymogen helps to restore function. It helps to regenerate the thymus gland. Epidolon does that a little bit too. So does growth hormone, but that's a different presentation. Next, we have estrogen, blood vessels. Blood vessels, so these three, thymogen, the blood vessel bioregulator, and epidolon, if you were only going to take 3 bioregulators, it would be these 3. Because why? Because the circulatory system is critical to getting nutrients to every part of your body, to every cell, and to removing waste products. And this bioregulator, not only does it ensure safe passage, but it helps to restore the endothelial lining of those blood vessels. I think we can all agree that this is fairly critical to healthy aging. Lungs, I think we can all agree, are super important. There's some really interesting studies here where COPD patients were treated with conventional treatment, and then another group of COPD patients were treated with conventional treatment and bronchogen. These people that got the bronchogen did a lot better than the people without. So this is another example of saying, we're not taking conventional medicine and throwing it out the window. What we're saying is, what can we do to augment it? How can we make it better? The liver, we want to eat liver, and we want a healthy liver. This liver bioregulator seems to be helpful as well in helping to restore balance to lipids. So HDL, LDL, VLDL, triglycerides, because again, so when we're using bioregulator peptides to help clients, for example, we try to think of the system, right? So if I'm talking to someone and they have blood regulation issues, I'm going to talk about the pancreas bioregulator, but I'm also going to talk about the liver. And finally, I picked for my top 6, Cardilax. Cardilax is the cartilage bioregulator. And you might say, you know what, Nat, I think my kidneys are way more important than my cartilage. But here's the thing. The cartilage bioregulator upregulates the production of collagen and elastin. So really important to keep looking good. But the other thing that collagen and elastin are critical for is for your heart to be able to beat properly, for your kidneys to be able to be elastic and do what they need to do, for your blood vessels to be able to expand and contract. So we can all say that probably Cardilax gets a seat at the table. All right. So bioregulator peptides, another thing that's really interesting about them is they're super safe. Why are they safe? Because of this concept of modulation. They don't boost, right? So for example, think about thyroid medication. You can't give thyroid meds to someone who's hyperthyroid because you'll drive them into overdrive. You have to get the dose right. When it comes to the thyroid bioregulator, all it's doing is trying to normalize function. It's restoring the thyroid. So you can give the thyroid bioregulator to someone who's hyperthyroid or hypothyroid. It's going to serve both populations really well. So this idea of restoring balance is a really important theme here. This is a thread that I want you to kind of walk away with, and that is that what we're trying to do is restore balance. And because we're able to do that, we have a measure of safety that is just really hard to get with pretty much anything else. So I'm going to give you a couple examples of clinical use. I don't know, what's my time like? All right, so here's some of the studies that Professor Cavinson did with humans. All right, so in this one, which I might need my glasses to see, we have elderly people. They're not very diplomatic with their terminology, I'm just here to say. okay? Because I don't know about you, but I'm thinking 60 to 74. 60 is not elderly. That's right, middle age, we got that. All right, so, but nevertheless, he took a bunch of 60 to 74-year-olds, which back in the day probably were elderly, let's face it, right? So back in the day, the control group got polyvitamins. The test group, all they got were the pineal gland bioregulator, epidolon, that we talked about before. He followed these people for 6 years and then for 12 years. They were only given the pineal bioregulator for 2 years. And look at what happens to mortality rate. All we can study in humans is, do these people die sooner than those people or later? In the test group, by the end of 6 years, 13.6% of the group were dead. In our pineal gland lucky lottery winners, only 8.5% of the people were dead. After 12 years, check this out, 44% of the people who got the polyvitamins were deceased, only half that many in the pineal bioregulator. So at this point, Professor Cavinson's like, wow, I think I'm onto something. So then he went and found even older people and said, okay, well, we're not going to follow you for 12 years because that's not fair. So we're going to just do a 6-year study here. And check it out. The first group only got the pineal bioregulator peptide, and they had a little more than half the mortality rate of the test group. But when he added thymogen, the thymus bioregulator, so now we're directly addressing the immune system, check it out. Our test group's doing is kicking it. They're sticking around a lot longer than the other guys. So this is all great, means I'm going to live longer, but remember that what we're after is health span, not just lifespan. So what did the pineal bioregulator really and thymus bioregulator really bring to these people? So in addition to reduced mortality rates, they had better brain function, they had better immunity, which is part of the reason why they live longer. Let's face it, if you don't get sick, you'll live longer. Their endocrine function overall was better. Their cardiovascular function was better. They had increased bone density, so you're less likely to fall apart when you fall down. And more youthful melatonin levels. And melatonin, we all know in this room, I know you guys know this, it's not just for sleep. It's one of the most powerful antioxidants in our bodies. The next study is the Gazprom study. So remember I told you, military said to young Cavinson, we got factories full of people that you could just see if you can make them better, right? So Gazprom is a big, big company, still exists in Russia. These guys are up in Siberia. They're not having their best life, let's face it. They were about 35 to 55-year-olds. He actually had 11,000 people in this study. 8,000 were test subjects, 3,000 were not. 3,000 got the infamous polyvitamins. So the 8,000 test subjects got 30 days of the brain, immune, bronchi, so lungs, blood vessel, liver, and cartilage. So brain is actually central nervous system, it's not the pineal. In this case, he was after a different outcome, so he wasn't looking for longevity. He was like, can I make these people healthier? What can I do for them? So the 3,000 kind of losers in the thing, they weren't losers, it's just they kind of lost in the when you draw straws. They got polyvitamins. So a year later, a year after this first group was given 30 days of these 6 bioregulators, the bioregulator group had reduced acute respiratory disease incidence of 50%. So they just didn't get sick as often. They had general incidence of disease less than 66%. Plus, even more exciting to their bosses is that they worked better. Better productivity. So the boss is like, sign us up, we're in. All right, the other really interesting thing about the pineal bioregulator, and there's another immune bioregulator called Villon, is that they're anti-tumorigenic. And how do we know this? So Professor Cavinson took a bunch of little mice that carry the HER2 gene, which means they are very, very, very prone, as in they will develop mammary tumors. And in these little mice, when they administered the pineal bioregulator or Villon, they noticed that, number one, they made fewer tumors, and when they did make them, they were smaller. Now, how much of that do we think has to do with melatonin production in the case of the pineal bioregulator? And then with Villon, it's just a general immune system booster, or support. But more importantly, it's just that they actually have they specifically have anti-tumor action. All right. Let's move on to real people. So we think of our athletes, high-performance athletes, as paragons of health. The bad news is the truth is that high-performance athletes are aging faster than the rest of us, right? Why? Because they're just burning the candle at both ends. The stress, the strains. This is Tora Bright. I don't know how many of you guys remember her. She was a snowboarder. She won 2 Olympic gold medals. Tora Bright when she was done racing, her trainers tested her biological age and realized that she was, as a 32-year-old, showing up as a 56-year-old from a biological age. This is not a good place to be. So the next slide is going to show the man that she worked with, but they called up this guy and they said, Bill, you got to help us out here. We have a very old, really important person to us. And so after 3 years of working with Tora, with bioregulators, they were able to reverse her biological age back to that of her actual chronological age. So that's our first hint that we're kind of onto something. Bill Lawrence is the man that they called. Bill Lawrence is a guy who I've had on the podcast a couple of times. If anybody is super interested in this topic, episodes 42 and 46 are with Bill Lawrence. And he's a guy that was a lawyer and comes from a family where, I think he's Mormon or something. They keep records, genealogical records. And it came to his attention that in 4 generations preceding him, not a single man in his family had made it to the age of 70. This is a problem. So Bill went running back to school. He got a whole bunch of degrees. And in his travels, he came across the work of Professor Kavinson. He was really intrigued. Professor Kavinson is not the most accessible person on the planet. So Bill was so enthralled that he got himself on a plane and flew to St. Petersburg, Russia, threw himself on the floor in front of Kavinson and said, please teach me. Work with me. So the good news for all of us is that Bill Lawrence is today 76 years old, very much alive, very healthy, and he's running human clinical trial in collaboration with Professor Kavinson. He's got about 200 people enrolled. I'm one of them. They're using exclusively the Kavinson oral bioregulators, the Nature's Marvels brand that's downstairs at the booth. And he's developing personalized protocols for these people. So I will tell you, this is not for the faint of heart. On average, I take 9 bioregulators a month. I'm doing 10-day cycles, 3 different cycles every month. It's a 3-year study. I already did a year. I'm doing 2nd year, and then I'll do my 3rd year and hopefully come out the other side better off. So all we're looking for here is 2 benchmarks, because what we're trying to do is, can we slow or reverse biological aging? So we're looking at telomere length, and we're looking at DNA methylation status based on the Horvath clock. So here's some of the preliminary data, and I'm going to need my glasses for this because these numbers are really small in front of me. I haven't done enough of the eye bioregulator yet. And these are just 3 of the people that were in the study. And after 2 years, we can see here that our first test subject, RB, came in he was 57 years old, and his telomere age was that of an 80-year-old. This is not such good news to Mr. RB. A year later, his biological age had dropped to 62. So RB's feeling pretty good about himself. He was on a medium dosage protocol. So in this study, people are either at the high, medium, or low, and that dictates how many bioregulators they're taking. In large part, it has to do with how much money a person's willing to spend. This is not cheap. Okay, BN was 68 chronologically, 74 biologically, according to his telomeres. Just, what is it? Not even a year later, he had reversed his biological age to that of a 64-year-old. These people were not asked to do anything different. That doesn't mean they didn't do anything different, but they were not asked to do anything different. They didn't change their diet. They didn't do much else. Now, there were people in this study, on the chart, I will tell you, whose biological age didn't budge. There were about 3 of them, which, of course, eagle-eyed Nat on the podcast is like, how come those people didn't get any younger? And Bill turned to me and said, well, here's the thing, Nat. I know every one of these people. Does anybody want to take a guess as to why those people didn't get any younger? Lifestyle's close. It was actually,
Smokers?
No, that's good too. It's actually stress. How interesting is that? So do your meditation. Get out in nature. Do the things. It's not a joke. So why is this important? Why is this spread important? Well, according to Steve Horvath, who developed that DNA methylation clock, if you're 7 years younger than your chronological age, then you have a 50% lower risk of all-cause mortality relative to your peer who's at their chronological chronological equals biological age. If you're 8 years older, you have double the risk of dying of all-cause mortality. So we definitely want to be on this side of the line. All right. In terms of so telomeres move pretty quickly, as you can see, right? Those people, one guy after 8 or 9 months lengthened his telomeres. DNA methylation is a tougher nut to crack. It takes a good 12 to 18 months, maybe even longer, to alter our DNA methylation patterns. So this is very, very preliminary data. This was very early in the study. COVID made a mess of the timing. Everything kind of came to a standstill. So he didn't have a lot of data on this. They'll be publishing a paper. I think it was supposed to be published last year. I have a feeling it's not going to come out till this year or maybe next. In any event, he took 9 of his subjects. On average, 9 subjects after 2 years of being on the protocol were on average a little over 5 years younger than their chronological age. Whereas his control group, which is people who'd never seen the inside of a bioregulator box, were on average almost 2 years older than their biological age. So I've done a lot of this testing with people. I do women's retreats. We do everybody's chronological and biological age. I will tell you the people are all over the map. But lifestyle, as you were saying, and stress has everything to do. So my N of 1, me, so this is a little bit thorny and interesting because 2 years ago, I was clocking in 14 years younger than my biological age, my chronological age, and my telomeres matched that of a 22-year-old. I just reran the tests, and they didn't come back exactly the way I would have liked. I'm now 8 years younger, so I've lost 6 years along the way. And my telomeres are still pretty damn good. I think I'm like 14 or 15 years younger. So I said to Bill, okay, I've been kind of stressed. Maybe I've been working too hard. What the heck do you think happened? And he said, Nat, I'm seeing this a lot. And now I don't want to have a conversation about this. I don't want to get into anything super, but anybody want to guess what might be going on? Well, is it the spike protein? So however it enters into the body, what they're seeing is that there's a possibility that maybe it's preventing our DNA from repairing as efficiently as it should. So now the new study is, can we fight that, right? So come see me in a year, I'll let you know. It's spike protein.
It mimics 138 tissues in the body.
I'm sorry?
Spike protein has molecular mimicry to 138 tissues in the body.
Yeah. I mean, I think people are just starting to figure out what's going on, and a lot of people, we don't know what we don't know. But anyway, the good news is we have tools at our disposal. So I wanted to leave you guys with something practical, because right now we've done a whole lot of talking, and you're like, okay, so what do I do with this? This is super awesome. And I did a couple of talks. I didn't do this part, and people came up to me and go, so what do I do? So knowledge is potential, action is power. Jim Quick talks about this a lot. So I'm going to share with you my 3 favorite stacks, or 3 stacks that I thought might be helpful. One of the things that I didn't get to say, that I didn't say earlier, is that the bioregulators are almost always used in stacks or in groups. We very rarely will use a bioregulator on its own. So the most foundational stack, which we can call the anti-aging stack, would be the pineal bioregulator with the thymus bioregulator and the blood vessel bioregulator. We talked about this earlier, right? Those are those first 3. And so if we just ran that group for 30 days, depending on our age, once, twice, 3 times, even 4 times a year, we would know that we're helping our body to kind of recover from day-to-day stresses and strains. The next one that I think I'm pretty attached to is brain health stack, right? So here we have the pineal bioregulator, the central nervous system, and the blood vessel bioregulator, because of course blood flow to the brain is everything. And finally, metabolic balance. So these are the 3 things, right? We want our age, our brain, and our metabolism. The liver, the pancreas, and the blood vessel. We want to breathe life. We want to support these organs so that they can support us back. So how else can we slow aging? So the point that I really want to leave you with, the bioregulators are fantastic, but don't forget everything else, right? We need to micronutrients. We need to macronutrients, our diets, our stress, actually there's a whole bunch of little icons here protecting our DNA, our diet. I still, I keep forgetting to look up what the roast beef stands for. I just have no idea what that icon is. Maybe muscle, but then exercise is next. I don't know. Deliberate cold exposure. The queen, she's at the back there. This is for you. Sauna, really important. Stress management. Micronutrient supplements, things like nitric oxide support, right? We've got a booth downstairs. That's all they do. Supporting my nitric oxide, supporting the processes in the body that will prepare the terrain so that when we bring the bioregulator onto the terrain, it can do its thing. And that's it. That's all I got. Thank you so much for your attention. This is me. One more thing is, if you go down to the Profound Health booth, they're giving away books. So books on the bioregulator, peptide bioregulator revolution or something. So they're really cool books. Maybe get yourself one of those. And if anybody has any questions, I might have a couple minutes for questions. Yes? So that's a good question. So thymosin alpha-1 is part of the family of peptides that we would call long-chain peptides. So they're less about rebuilding things than they are about, for example, thymosin alpha-1 is going to help to bring up the innate immune system function versus the extrinsic immune system function, right? So it's got more immediate action, right? And it's a signaling molecule. It's less of a genetic, like these are epigenetic switches. I probably didn't say that. It's a big piece of the puzzle. Anybody else? Yeah. So each organ, so if you eat heart, you're going to get heart bioregulator. If you eat liver, you're going to, and then there's the organ supplements.